marking October 7th and 1 year of war in the Middle East. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It is October 7th. It has been 1 year since Hamas attacked Israel. The surprise attack by the terror group killed 1,200 people. 250 others were taken hostage. Approximately 100 hostages have never been returned, and 1/3 of those people are believed to be dead. In the run-up to today's anniversary, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video directed at the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Macron is calling for a halt on arms deliveries to Israel for use in Gaza. In response, Prime Minister Netanyahu said his country is fighting a war on 7 fronts.
Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side.
According to news reports today, Macron also criticized Israel's decision to send ground troops into Lebanon. However, he also reiterated France's quote-unquote unwavering commitment to Israel. Speaking this weekend in Paris, where he was attending the Francophonie Summit, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continued his long-standing call for a ceasefire, but also said Israel has a right to defend itself.
We have, from the very beginning, recognized the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th, required Israel to defend itself, to defend its people. Every country has the right to defend its sovereignty and its people. At the same time, we have consistently called for the protection of civilians and the upholding of international law. That's why we support the work of the ICC and the ICJ, why we continue to call for a ceasefire as we have for for almost a year now. We will continue to work with partners and allies in the region to push for protection of civilians, for humanitarian aid, for Hamas to lay down its arms, for hostages to be released. We need to see peace in the region. The only way to do that is to get back on a path towards a 2-state solution where a peaceful, secure Israel is recognized alongside a peaceful, secure Palestinian state recognized by all.
In Gaza today, Hamas marked the anniversary of its attack by firing a barrage of rockets at Tel Aviv. There were no formal events planned in Gaza today, where Israel's incursion is ongoing and huge areas have been completely destroyed and thousands have been killed. The fighting between Israel and the Iranian proxies has spilled into Lebanon. In a statement today, Hezbollah vowed to continue its attacks on Israel until there is a ceasefire in Gaza. It called the state of Israel a cancerous gland that must be eliminated no matter how long it takes. Global Affairs Canada says it has helped more than 1,000 people leave Lebanon, and it continues to urge Canadians to flee the country. The department says 5,000 people have expressed an interest in doing so. Minister Trudeau echoed those calls in Paris on Saturday.
We have highlighted many times it's important to ensure that civilian infrastructure like the Port of Beirut and the airport are properly protected and not struck. We're increasing support for commercial flights. There are spaces for Canadians on those planes that have not at this point been filled. So I'll encourage any Canadian who can leave Lebanon to leave Lebanon. We are ensuring flights to be able to do that, because if the situation gets worse, as we are working very hard to try and prevent it from getting worse, it will be extraordinarily difficult for the tens of thousands of Canadians who are currently in Lebanon, and obviously extraordinarily difficult for all Lebanese civilians if things get worse.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said more flights out of Lebanon are expected this week, and she encouraged people to get out of the country.
We've agreed to add more flights next week, including on Monday and on Tuesday. Of course, these flights will be between Beirut and Lebanon, and at this point there's around 1,000 Canadians that have been able to leave through this assisted departure. Since a lot of seats were not necessarily filled, we were able to work with Americans, with the Australians and New Zealanders, and we're also working with European countries. So basically my message, like the Prime Minister just mentioned, if you are offered a seat, please take it. We know things are difficult, but we want to make sure that your safety and yours and the one of your family is ensured.
Here at home, events have been held across the country: protests, marches, memorial services. There have been huge rallies in Ottawa by both pro-Palestinian supporters and supporters of Israel. This was Calgary area Conservative MP Shuv Majumdar at one such event on Parliament Hill.
12 months to defund UNRWA, as Prime Minister Stephen Harper did 12 years ago. 12 months of confronting keffiyeh-adorned extremist enthusiasts in the governing coalition at every turn, confronting their moral equivalence, confronting their betrayal, their arms embargo, and their extremism. 12 months we've stood with you because we believe that from the river to the sea, Israel has a right to exist and be free.
Jewish groups are holding events in cities across Canada today, mourning the victims of the October 7th attack and continuing to call for the return of hostages. In Israel today, there was a memorial event for victims of the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas killed 364 people and took 44 others hostage. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
Involuntary treatment for drug addiction is back in the news. In Ontario, at an upcoming meeting of the mayors of Ontario's big cities, there will be a vote on a motion calling on the Ontario government to bring in a system of mandatory residential mental health and addiction treatment. The mayors say it's in response to the increasing number of homeless encampments in their cities. Patrick Brown is the mayor of Brampton, Ontario. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to be on your show.
What do you want the Ontario government to do?
Well, first of all, I can't speak to the motion at OBCM that has been put forward on the 18th, but I can speak to what we're trying to do locally in Brampton and Peel Region. And in Peel Region, we've asked for a pilot project based on what we've seen rolled out in British Columbia and New Brunswick. You know, I feel, Rob, that we've become numb to daily overdose fatalities in Ontario when it comes to opioids. And I don't want to simply accept that every day we're going to see preventable tragedies. We have individuals who face such an intense addiction, they are unable and not equipped to actually understand they need help, or they're going to lose their own life. And what they're doing in British Columbia right now and in New Brunswick is compassionate intervention, making sure that those that need treatment get treatment. Some people refer to it as involuntary care. But we have to do something different. The current model is broken. Our hospital is overrun. Our police force is spending their time doing mental health work, not on their normal work for keeping public order. And it's the status quo is broken right now.
Okay, so what would be the components of a pilot program then? What does that look like?
So, if it saves lives, like it has in Europe and elsewhere, then it could be expanded. But the pilot project would be if someone, right now we have a first responder, they see someone in crisis, and they go to wait with someone in the hospital, and then they get released, and the cycle repeats itself. Right now in Peel Region, in the last 2 years, we've had 7,000 repeat mental health apprehensions. We've had police spend 30,000 hours in the hospital, 153,000 hours of police time. And so what the approach that we're suggesting is that if someone's in crisis and two physicians agree that they need treatment in order to save their own life, then they would involuntarily be put into treatment. But you could have checks and balances on this to make sure it's only for the most intense circumstances where a life is at risk. And I'm a big believer there's no monopoly on a good idea, and if a practice that is working elsewhere can save lives, we should be looking at it here.
Okay. What sort of response to your inquiries have you received from the Ontario government?
Yeah, so I know there's champions of this in the Ontario government. I've spoken to our mental health minister, Michael Tobolo, who I think is a brilliant mind in our province when it comes to what we need to do to help those struggling with addictions. I know he has been very intrigued and supportive of this concept. But obviously there are a number of people that would need to be on side: the Premier, the Attorney General, the Minister, the Minister of Health. I hope that they're willing to give this a look. It looks like that's the direction that Alberta will be going as well. And so there is this growing recognition that the current approach is flawed. And when you see daily overdose fatalities, it is time to try something different. And if it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board. But I'm saying we can't simply accept this as our status quo, that we allow people in plain sight to die every single day on our streets or in encampments.
Okay. I must ask you about something else, Mr. Mayor, while I have you on the line as a civic leader in Canada. Today is October 7th, of course, the first anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. You represent a very diverse part of the country. I would like to know, what has this last year been like in your community?
So we haven't had some of the significant protests like you have seen elsewhere. That hasn't been something that we have witnessed. But obviously there are the Hamas attack on Israel was horrifying. And like you, I have friends that would talk about how terrifying it was when they have loved ones living in Israel. At the same time, I think it's fair to say that I have a large Muslim community in Brampton who over the last year has seen on television every day the loss of life in the Palestinian Authority, which has been terrifying and horrifying for them as well. And so I think in my community, it's just hope that this chapter ends as quickly as possible, and that we get back to a point in the Middle East that we're not seeing scenes on TV every day of death.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Always nice to hear your voice. Thanks for coming on today. Yeah, appreciate it. Yep. The Mayor of Brampton, Ontario, Patrick Brown. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Back with you on a Monday here alongside David Smith. Our Newsday panel is coming up right after the news at the bottom of the hour. And David, there's an old line in Canadian politics.
Yes.
If you're not young and liberal, you don't have a heart. And if you're not old and conservative, you don't have a brain.
Yes, I've heard that.
Right. Yeah. You know, this idea that conservative support is mainly derived from, say, people over the age of 50 or even older than that, over the age of 60. And the conservative base, if there is one, it's much more of an older cohort. And yet the National Post picks up today on a story derived from some public opinion polling by Leger that points out actually younger Canadians are supporting the Conservatives more than the older demographics. Now, you're a younger Canadian. What do you think is going on there?
Well, I think it's look, I don't think it's necessarily that young people are flocking to a right-wing ideology. I think it's pretty circumstantial in its origin. This polling that shows young people are more willing to vote conservative than they would have been 10 years ago. It's because of the issues that we talk about all the time with the country, with the cost of living, social issues. All of these things right now are disproportionately impacting young people under 35 in the early stages of a career. When you talk about house prices, when you talk about the job market, opportunities for advancement, low GDP per capita, all of these things impact you more if you're more early on in your life, if you don't already have a portfolio that grows with the market every year, if you don't already have a mortgage that's almost paid off, or a home that doesn't have a mortgage on it that's only going up in value. If you're over a certain age, you're benefiting from some of the things that we view as problems for people who are younger.
So it's this idea that, look, Canadians are clearly disappointed in the state of things right now. The government that's in charge right now is going to have a hard time being reelected. All the public opinion polls suggest it's going to be very difficult for the Liberals, whether the election is this fall, next spring, next fall. If the Liberals are to have any hope, they have a lot of ground to make up. They're 20 points behind, according to almost all of the polls. So there's a lot of dissatisfaction among voters. But that dissatisfaction is it's on steroids when it comes to younger Canadians. Who's the most disappointed? Who feels maybe the most let down by the current government? Well, it's probably young people, right? Young people who have seen rents soar, young people who have, well, all but given up hope, I guess, of ever having a home to call their own. You know, even if prices come down, interest rates go up, and they're no further ahead. And you know, the precarious employment situation right now, and employment is on the rise right now. It's very interesting. Conservative support stronger among voters aged 18 to 34 than any other age cohort. The under 34s backing the Tories by 47%. 47%, almost unheard of, really, when it comes to conservative support in this country. That compares to 45% for those between the ages of 35 and 54, 41% for voters over the age of 55. That's very interesting. Newsday panel coming up. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
And our Newsday panelists are all here. Chris Day is the president of Winston Wilmot. Hi, Chris.
Hello, sir.
Hi, welcome back. Cam Holmstrom is principal at Neepaway Strategies. Welcome back, Cam. Good to hear from you.
Always glad to be here.
Chris, I'd like to begin with you on this October 7th, this terrible one-year anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. How do you think it has impacted our politics in this country?
I think it's had a profound impact and will continue to. I think it has exposed, frankly, some very, very deep cleavages in society, but also within our politics. I think it has separated people who are willing to stand with a democratic ally who has been attacked by terrorists and who has faced the largest loss since the Holocaust, and stand in direct opposition to people who have shamefully and shamelessly been promoting, advocating for, and apologizing for the actions of listed and known terrorist groups, and frankly, one of the world's great pariah states and pariah actors, the regime in Tehran. So this is one of those quintessential good versus evil arguments, and I think people will be judged on which side they found themselves on over the last 12 months.
Okay. Cam, how do you think the attack of October 7th by Hamas on Israel has impacted Canadian politics?
I think what it's done, it's made it harder to hold the middle ground, is what it's done. And the reason why I say that is because I was commenting on this somewhere earlier today. You know, you think it was only, a little more than 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, we saw the signing of the Oslo Accords, right? And we saw this path towards a potential two-state solution and trying to find a constructive solution to this intractable situation. And here we are today, and we're so far away from that point. And I think what's come from this is that as much as some people really want to paint this as black and white, and for large parts it is, for many parts it isn't. And I think that's part of the problem with the situation, is that we're not in a position as a country to offer solutions to this. And we have people on both sides who are rightfully calling out, who wanting empathy and deserve empathy in this moment. But you can't deliver it in equal portions. You just can't, because how can you look at what happened a year ago, the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and not recognize that? And I think that's been part of the problem here, is that it's pushing it further towards the edges, and it's further away from solution. And yeah, for me, it's heartbreaking to see, because I got into political life to try to find solutions. That is always been my bottom line. And when I see, especially some on the further left who are running around with Hezbollah flags and things of that nature, I just don't know pardon my language, I just don't know what the hell they're trying to accomplish. I really don't.
Well, let me ask you about something else then. I mean, the support for the Palestinian cause has always been a big thing in NDP circles, and you know, you that's your territory, the NDP, not Palestine, I mean. But certainly there's a push on now by the New Democrats to have Canada become part of a group of nations that are recognize Palestinian statehood. What do you think about that, Cam? About how that's unfolding?
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Is that
okay?
Like, to my mind, historically, there are only two real fault lines for the NDP when it comes to policy. One is guns; the other is Palestine. And there's always been a strong faction with NDP that has pushed more towards the Palestinian side, but there's also been a very strong side that's pushed for the Israeli side. We're not seeing that balance in this anymore. And what worries me about this is that, and I said this also earlier today as well, you can declare Palestinian statehood today. What is it going to change? What is it going to help? Right? It's not going to do anything to change the situation on the ground, help Palestinian people on the ground, or help trying to find a solution. It's not going to do that. And that, to me, is what upsets me in this moment. And what bothers me more than anything else is that in a moment where, honestly, I think you need to have cooler heads, you need to try to find a path forward. My team has jumped to one side, and I honestly, for me personally, it's been very difficult to watch, because I'm honestly, this issue is so far removed from me, but it's put me in a very uncomfortable position of, you know what? I empathize with the people whose families died on this day. I empathize with people who are being bombed, but at the same time, I know that going down this road that's being pushed by the further left is not going to resolve a darn thing.
Okay. When you are a big tent party and the Liberals would consider themselves to own the biggest tent there are going to be competing points of view. And of course, this issue has divided the Liberals. How do you think Prime Minister Trudeau has handled this whole thing over the last year, Chris Day?
I mean, there's being a big tent party, and then there's speaking out of both sides of your mouth and saying different things to different groups of people in hopes of holding on to 12 swing ridings across the country. And that is what has been most shameful in the last 12 months in terms of the performance of this government. They have abandoned Canada's long-standing principled stance with regards to two-state solution and the preconditions for that and what needs to happen so that we're not rewarding terrorists or creating a state that is absolutely hell-bent on wiping one of our allies off of the map. That's just an untenable proposition. And yet, for the last 12 months, the Liberals have attempted to say different things to different people and try and have their cake and eat it too, and it doesn't work, and we're seeing that in the polls, at least partly, I think.
Okay, we'll turn our attention to the games that are being played in the House of Commons right now with motions and non-confidence votes. I was a bit surprised, I have to say, to see the Conservatives vote with the other opposition parties in favor of the Bloc's request for an increase in payments for OAS. What is going on there? We'll ask our panelists when we return. It's our Newsday panel. I'm Rob Snow on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Back with our Newsday panelists, Chris Day, the president of Winston Wilmot, and Cam Holmstrom from Nipaway Strategies. The Bloc Québécois wants two things. It wants protections for supply management from any free trade negotiations, and it wants an increase in payments for OAS, old age security, starting at age 65. On the OAS question, the prevailing opinion from the experts I've spoken with seems to be that this request from the Bloc on OAS, increased payments for OAS, it's bad policy, it's expensive policy. If you want to help lower income seniors, the OAS is not the way to do it because it's not income tested. A better way to do it would be to increase GIS somehow, increase payments in the guaranteed income supplement. And seniors don't need the money, young people need the money, and this is not, quote unquote, generationally fair. So there are all kinds of reasons to vote against it that you would think would be in line with fix the budget, which is one of those four things Poilievre keeps talking about. And yet it comes up for a vote. The motion comes up for a vote. And there are the Conservatives voting with the other opposition parties in favor of this request from the Bloc, this motion from the Bloc. I have to say, kind of caught me off guard. What do you think is going on, Chris Day?
So I think it's very much in line with the ideological leanings that you put more money into people's pockets and they know better what to do with it than government. So I think that is kind of what is also, what's basically at play. What is also, sort of at play is that this is a no-risk support measure that had considerable downside risk in ridings that Conservatives really do hope to win at some point, and will be competing with the Bloc for that win in terms of squeezing out the Liberals, in terms of fending off other parties. So the attack ads of voting against something like more money for seniors write themselves, kind of like voting yes to a bill that would say it's okay to kick a dog in the mouth, right? Like that's not
okay.
That's not a good policy. I'm not convinced that this is great policy either, but it's certainly not a good electoral practice to say no to giving more money to seniors.
Okay. Why do you think the Conservatives voted with the other opposition parties in favor of the Bloc's motion for more money through the OAS, Cam? What do you think is going on there?
To be honest, I think the most important thing that Chris mentioned there is that there's no consequence to this. It was a non-binding vote. It didn't mean a thing. You're not getting any upside because at the end of the day, it's not going to actually make it happen.
This couldn't have forced the government to give a royal recommendation, which this bill needs to become law. So it wasn't going to happen. But you avoid the downside. And honestly, at the end of the day, how is it that you can say, you've been saying for months, we want to take down this government, we oppose this government at every turn. And then the one time you don't is when it could take money out of seniors' pockets, in theory. Like, come on now. Chris is right on that. There would be attack ads run for months on that. To me, the interesting thing about this, though, which I find very interesting, this whole discussion, is that really for the first time, and I think this is the generational change we're seeing in the voting public and the makeup of it, is that doing something for seniors like this would have been a no-brainer because the number of seniors was higher, especially those that turn out and vote. It made so much sense. But now the demographics are changing. There are fewer and fewer seniors of that age with us. There are more and more young people who are right to say this is generationally unfair. This doesn't help me. Ironically, a lot of those people are looking at the Conservatives and saying, I'm going to back him. So to me, it's like, if you're going to write an attack ad, if I was one of the other parties, I'll be saying, especially if I were the Liberals at this point, because they're the ones who oppose it, say, look, young people, he wants to give more money to your parents and grandparents who don't need it.
The people who already own homes. The people who have they've owned their homes for so long, they're paid off their homes.
Well,
and they're getting more money and you're not.
Exactly. You're the one suffering. You need the help, not them. I'm here for you. So to me, there was no way to avoid a downside, but for the upside, there was none because again, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. Okay. What do you think of that analysis, Chris? No downside.
Agree.
No downside.
It's all lose. To say I'm going to vote against more money for Quebec seniors and vote with the Liberals on this particular piece. This gives the Bloc, it gives the Conservatives, it gives the NDP the ability to go into ridings that will be competitive, 2, 3, even 4-way competitions next time, and say the Liberals voted against giving you more. And that is, at this point, a couple of months out from an election, potentially, that's really important.
Okay. When we come back, the timing of the next federal election, our panelists will make their case, their predictions. When is that election going to be? Could it really be this fall? Is there going to be a fall, maybe early winter election? Is that really in the cards? Next spring? Next fall, the thing goes the distance? Get some people on the record here when we come back to our Newsday panel on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
With our Newsday panelists, Cam Holmstrom and Chris Day. Cam Holmstrom, I'd love to hear your case about when you think the next federal election is going to be in the fall, next spring, or next fall. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm down to two options there, Rob. It's either going to be this fall, winter, or it's going to be next fall. The way I look at it is that if we somehow make it to past Christmas time with an election not being called, we're going to make it all the way to the next fall. Just because, just because logistically, there are all the rumors running around that Doug Ford's going to go in the spring, and I have a real hard time picturing a federal government or even the members of our current Parliament wanting to trigger an election at the same time as one is going on in Ontario. That would be just chaos beyond chaos. Not to mention, it's all the same people doing both campaigns, same volunteers, same staff. So, to my mind, if we get to Christmas, we're going to get all the way to the summer. And if we get to the summer, well, hey, that's just free campaign time. We're all collecting your paycheck. So, till then, you make it to the fall.
Okay, so if not this fall, then it's going the distance, according to Cam Holmstrom. And I do like the Ontario situation thrown in there. That's a very good observation. Chris Day, what would you say, Chris? What's your case for when you think the next federal election is going to be?
So I keep hearing whispers that include that, famous P word, prorogation. I can't help but think that the Liberals are going to, at some point, say, enough with getting beat over the head with, issues and this and that. Give us a bit of breathing room. We can campaign basically on the taxpayer dime for the next 6 months and hope people like us again. Come back with a budget that's been written by the public service, essentially, a throne speech, etc., and then try their luck in the spring. If, for instance, Cam's scenario plays out and we find ourselves in an election, I think the likelihood of being brought down purposely, it goes down immensely. So I do see some potential for it to go the distance. But if, Doug Ford doesn't trigger an election and they've come back and, there's a budget that people think is probably spending too much or not enough in the right areas, and then I could see a spring election very, very easily. That was my sort of presupposition going into.
Yeah, that's kind of the case that I right now. The House of Commons calendar says the session is supposed to go all the way until the 17th of December. I don't think it's going to last that long.
No.
I think they're going to call it
already.
Yeah, they're going to call. I don't know if anybody could stand to be there until the 17th of December. I think they're going to call it quits early, and then I think they're going to come back late. They're supposed to be back on the 27th of January. I don't think that's going to happen. I could see the Prime Minister asking for prorogation and the House coming back sometime in the early spring, at which time the Liberals would present a budget, stuff with all kinds of goodies, what they see as goodies, and that would serve as the Liberal election platform. That's what I think is going to happen right now. But I have to say, I'm really interested in all the buzz that we could be in election by the end of the year. I just don't know if it's going to happen, but a lot of people think it's going to happen.
To be honest, at the end of the day, there's a lot of something that someone's going to have to swallow if you're going to make it that far, right? Mm-hmm. And honestly, and Chris mentioned, things are tense. People aren't happy. It's not a nice place to be right now. And yeah, the longer it goes in the fall, it just makes it a little more testy and a little more easy for some to say, to heck with it, just pull the plug and go.
Okay. Look, a lot of fun. It's so interesting watching our politics these days. I thank you so much for your time, both of you. We'll speak soon.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye. Cam Holmstrom, principal at Nepoy Strategies. Chris Day is the president of Winston Wilmot. Our talkback is coming up right after the news. At the top of the hour, 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today we really want to talk about what you think are the biggest issues these days. What is the biggest issue in Canada right now? What is the biggest challenge Canadians are facing right now? Right in the here and now. Give us a call right after the news. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Let's get at it. This is Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today we really want to ask you what you think is the biggest issue these days in this country. We're going to be keeping track of your answers because we're curious to see, curious to hear, curious to know if any trends emerge between now and the end of the show. We ask this kind of question a few times a year. And now we're well into the final 3 months of the year, so it's a good time to ask it again. What do you think is the biggest issue in Canada right now? Or what do you think is the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? I mean, we have a long list of big issues that you can choose from, and there are no wrong answers. Just because your issue isn't on our list doesn't mean it's not an important issue. In fact, if it's important to you, it may be important to someone else. So we encourage you to take part in our conversation today. First one of the week. We have 2 hours to talk about these big issues, and our number to call is 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. Pollsters ask this type of question all the time, or a variation on this question all the time. And all the political parties, of course, they all do their own polling in this vein because they want to know what you think is important. So we thought today, let's put it right to our audience. Okay, we come to you and we say, this is a big issue. We want you to comment on it. Today, we're kind of taking your lead. What's the biggest issue in the country? What's the biggest challenge that Canadians face right now? And again, gonna write down your answers. We're gonna see if there are any themes that emerge as the day goes on. So 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. And if you're a first-time caller, just mention that to our call screener, and we will make your call a priority. What is the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing the country right now? 1-833-668-2577. When pollsters ask this type of question, they usually have a list of issues, people can choose from. Press 1 if you think it's healthcare. Press 2 if you think it's housing. That's kind of how we're approaching this discussion today. Okay? On our list, here's what we have. And when you make up a list like this, you realize, my gosh, there are a lot of issues in this country these days. But here's what we have, and maybe this can act as a conversation starter for you. Okay? We have the cost of living. The cost of living. Paying for the basics, affording groceries, paying utility bills, putting gas in the car, the cost of living. Then we have housing and housing affordability. Mortgage rates, housing prices, rental payments. Then we have jobs, finding a job, keeping a job. The unemployment rate, you'll notice, has been on the rise recently. So jobs, healthcare, long waits in the emergency room, shortage of family doctors, long waits for medical treatment. Immigration is on our list because that's an issue that is coming up more often these days. The levels of immigration. We have homelessness, tent cities. We did an interview on that with the mayor of Brampton, Ontario. Climate change in the environment. This is apparently not as big an issue as it once was for some Canadians, according to a recent poll. We have the drug crisis. We have government finances and taxes, the national debt deficits, tax increases, carbon taxes. We have crime and public safety. And also on the list, geopolitics. Okay, what's happening in the Middle East? What's happening in Ukraine? U.S. election less than a month from now. All of these events are impacting Canada. So, that's our list. Again, if your big issue or big challenge is not on our list, that's okay. We just want to know what you think is the biggest issue in the country right now, or the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now. 1-833-668-2577. Nathaniel in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Nathaniel. Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
What do you think is the biggest issue in the country right now?
I honestly think right now it's spending. It's all the tax dollars, all the spending that they are giving to everybody else but our own country. Everything you listed requires money. And if we're spending majority of our, to every other country giving money, what about the issues we have here in our city, in our country, that require money? To me, that's the biggest issue.
Okay, so you think things like foreign aid or military support for Ukraine, things like that, for example?
Absolutely. Now, I don't, be careful how I say that because I think there's a place for it, and I don't know what happened over the last, 100, 200 years and how much money we've given to other countries when these things happen. But to me, it sounds like every day there's more money being given to everybody else but the people in our own city.
Okay, so too much government money being spent in other countries. Too much taxpayer dollars going to other countries. Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. You've got us off to a good start there. Let's take another one. Joe in Nova Scotia. Joe, thanks for calling. What do you think is the biggest issue in the country right now, Joe?
Hey, Rob. The biggest thing that I see as a problem in this country is, and it's a North American problem, is it's the opioid crisis. Like our futures, like our future population, are dying like incredibly, and it's like it's something that we like. It's avoided because the general population isn't involved in it, and it is killing our teenagers, our 20-year-olds, our 30-year-olds, our 40-year-olds, I mean, it is. I would say that is the biggest problem in this country. That, I mean, like, everybody's got to deal with interest rates and mortgage rates and that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you're set up that, I mean, it sucks, but like, we got kids out there dying, like thousands a year, and that's our future population. And like, I don't know what the solution is. I really, really don't. Like, it's obviously the solution would be to eliminate it. That the drugs coming into the country, but that's a pretty hard task. So, I mean, I'm supporting these guys, helping them to build a future, because, I mean, like, these guys don't have a future. Like, that's the thing, is they're never going to have a house, right? So, but anyway, Rob, like, I appreciate your time, and
I appreciate your call, Joe. Thank you for calling from Nova Scotia today. Joe says it's the opioid crisis, the drug crisis, the toxic supply of drugs that's out there. What is the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing Canada right now? 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow,
where we are asking, what is the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. Michael in Cape Breton. Thanks for calling, Michael.
How you doing today, Mr. Snow?
I'm good. Good, Michael. Thank you. What do you think?
The biggest challenge I find facing the country today, we got no captain at the ship of state to guide the ship. All we got is politicians that should be showing the general public or educating the regular people on things to think about that govern their life in this country, on ways to either make it better or try to make it better or tune into why it's not better. But what we got in this country today is you got a bunch of insignificant politicians that are only jockeying for the next term in office, if they're re-offering, that they can get, and they're not going to open their mouth and rock no boats. You're watching our universal health care system being done by stealth, wiped out across the country, and the young people haven't got a clue, not opening their mouth. And when you got no leaders to open their mouth, you know what happens to your health care system. It's gone. You got private companies in this country, right across the country. Example given, one here in Nova Scotia. You got companies here in Nova Scotia that are like a feeding frenzy of sharks, waiting for them to put the Nova Scotia Liquor Commission up for sale so they can be called a great entrepreneur next year at a business that you can't fail at. But let them give it to little Joe Blow on the street and make his life better. They'll tell him to go on out and get a job. You're not following what's going on. It's just got to end, Rob. And after 150 years, my biggest wish is they create a pill to help people with their mental block and start changing their political attitudes from liberal and Tory. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Leadership. I think he's unsatisfied with the crop of leaders we have in this country. I'll put you down. Leadership. He thinks it's a lack of leadership. Tim in Halifax. Tim, thank you for calling. What do you think is the biggest issue in the country right now, Tim?
Well, I'm going to go with political accountability. I think a lot of the issues that are bringing up now are circle back to that. They screw up their job, there's no accountability. They just kind of get shoved.
Okay, if that.
Yeah. I like it comes back to immigration, it comes back to healthcare, it comes back to the deficit, it comes back to all these things. There's no political accountability. Like years ago, I'm not suggesting this, but the old term "return better the politicians" and stuff like that. Like they just get their pensions down. There's no accountability at all in the system.
Okay.
Like,
so how could you? Let me ask you a question, Tim. If accountability is lacking in the country among our political leaders, how would you enforce accountability? How would you do that?
Right now the mantra is, hold them accountable at the next election. Well, I think if you really royally screw up your job, how about you lose your pension? They don't work very long or very hard for their pension either.
Okay.
Or maybe actually hold them account to the laws. There's a lot of blocking going on, from my understanding, right now in Parliament. Documents not being surrendered over and such. And another point I want to make is right now we're supplying munitions to Ukraine, and they've gone from defending themselves to invading Russia. Nobody's talking about that either.
Well, I think quite a few people are talking about that. Yeah, attacking inside of Russia. Yeah, I think so.
I haven't heard anybody, but yeah.
I'm curious because there's been kind of moves before to have things like recall legislation. For example, you get so many names on a signature and you try to recall the politician. They tried to do that with the mayor of Calgary, but the threshold was so high that it was doomed to fail. You know, would you support something like that, a recall mechanism?
But and then the other, I don't know much about that, but I just know there's no political accountability right now. And one more point I want to make is I don't think that any party that has the interests of one province in mind should be allowed to run for federal politics.
Okay.
Because you don't have Canada's best interest in mind. You're running to government to run the country, not for a single province. And I'm speaking of the bloc, for example.
Sure, of course,
like,
yeah. Okay, Tim, thank you.
Anyway,
thank you.
I'm going.
Accountability. There's no accountability. Good one. Okay, when we come back, what is the biggest issue in the country, the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What is the biggest issue, the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? Andre in Kitchener. What's your answer, Andre?
Hi, Rob. That's funny because I was having a conversation this weekend when we went out for pumpkins. My son's 9. His name's Winter. And we were talking about, why all this money, and we can't get nothing, right? Because like $20 bills worth nothing. So like I said to Andrea earlier, I think greediness has got really bad. Now there's too many people. And, we're scratching each other's back. I find myself that I remember days when I made a lot of money from working, and I pretty much had the same amount of money because I knew some still goes in a savings, stuff like that. Now, we can't even do that, right? We said it before.
Okay.
So greediness got us to this point. So my thing to say to Canada especially is, it's unfair we got ourselves there as Canadians, but, we need to learn to live in the present and be kind to each other, and hopefully we'll get out of it.
Okay. Thank you, Andre, for your call. Greed. Things are too expensive. So very much a pocketbook-related issue there. Wade in Sylvan Lake, Alberta. Thank you for calling, Wade. What's the biggest issue in the country right now, Wade?
When we got done the picture, she grabbed the rope and crawled back.
Hello, Wade.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Wade. Thank you.
Good. I think the biggest challenge facing Canada today is it's kind of a two-part thing, getting tyrant Trudeau out of there and trying to shake Canadians out of their apathy.
Okay. When you say apathy, what do you mean?
Well, it just doesn't seem like anybody's, doing what we need to do to, for example, fight for freedom.
Okay. Well, what should people be doing that they're not doing?
Well, getting involved in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Like volunteering on a campaign or something like that, or
all
signing a name
things,
to a petition, going to a protest, something like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I got involved with the constituency association in our group here in where I live.
Okay.
And even the people that are on that board, we're not getting involved enough. We should be, I think, doing a lot more than what we're doing. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with Rebel News.
Sure,
I went to Rebel News Live in Calgary the other night, and the speakers they had there were just absolutely incredible. And there should be more people that are standing up for the truth and not having a bill like C-63 trying to stop people from speaking the truth.
Okay. All right. You're talking about the Internet Regulation Bill, right?
Yeah, the Online Harms Act.
Online harms. Yeah. Okay. All right, Wade. Yeah. Apathy, lack of interest, lack of involvement in political affairs. These lack of awareness, I guess, is what Wade is saying. Okay. Very interesting. Thank you, Wade. The news is coming up, and then more of your calls. It's Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
What is the biggest issue facing the country, or what is the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. What is that issue for you? Alicia in Red Deer. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? What would be your answer here?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that really to consider in this conversation and strategies that approach this is that these topics cannot actually be discussed in such a siloed manner. I think that they are all really interlinked. You can't have a conversation about homelessness without also discussing this opioid crisis and mental health concerns. You can't discuss the housing shortage without also looking at affordability and the fact that there's a skilled labor shortage, and if you can afford a house, you might not even be able to find one. So all of these are really interlinked. And if you look at the very basics of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I mean, there at the bottom is food safety, security. And so Canadians on a whole are experiencing this instability and insecurity with all sorts of pieces. But what I see is kind of a short-sighted approach to this is the top issue and this is the top issue, when really you can't discuss one without looking at the other.
Okay. So how do you get at the so-called root cause of all of these issues then? What do you do? If you're a political leader, what do you do? If you're trying to solve big, complex problems, what do you do?
You don't solve them by yourself. You have to involve other ministries, other people in these conversations and have those insights and look at it as a holistic approach from a blue sky perspective.
Okay. So you're saying this entire show that I'm doing right now is what? Useless?
Oh, no. These conversations
That's very
are
depressing
absolutely
to
crucial.
me because I spent a lot of time on this today,
No, I think the conversations themselves are critical.
Right.
But the conversations have to then, at the end result, be interlinked, right? They have to say, these are all of the pieces that feed into each other.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I look at these things, affordable housing, okay? Job security, access to health care, immigration, I mean, isn't immigration tied to all of those things, for example?
100%. Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
access
we
to
see
health
skilled
care,
laborers coming in
trying to
and,
find a job, trying to find an affordable apartment, you know, things like that. Yeah, I understand what you're
conversations
saying.
are all interlinked. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we're not trying to be siloed. I really don't like those buzzwords, by the way, siloed. Okay, Alicia, thank you. Gotcha. Okay. Rob in Nova Scotia, thank you for calling, Rob.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
You know, I'm trying not to be siloed. What's the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing the country right now?
Well, for me, it's just the accountability and transparency. Hey?
Okay,
you know,
all right.
And you said earlier, you know, you wanted to know how we could do that. Well, I'm sitting here from my little chair here, just thinking simple here, like KPIs for Pete's sakes, right? Like keep it simple, you know?
Okay.
Cost per service per program, right? Wait times for services, you know, program enrollment and participation rates, you know, whatever those simple things are. If we had simple measurements in place that, you know, that they were achievable, whether they did or not, right, was a success, or whether they stayed or not, right, in position.
Right. Like, are we
From
using
any level?
How are we measuring success and failure? What metrics are we
doing
using?
The job, or are you doing the job, or you're not doing the job, based on these KPI percentages, right?
Okay. KPI. Okay, I'm not really sure what you mean by KPI.
Oh,
I'm
sorry, Rob. Sorry, Rob. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. Key performance indicators.
Oh, key performance indicators. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just
That's
assumed.
okay.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so basic key performance indicators are measurements that we've used in business, right, for years to hold us accountable, right, and doing our jobs. And oddly enough, you know, even when I was a facility manager looking after contracts, right, in the Alberta government, I mean, that's just how things get done, right?
Okay, all right.
Why can't they have that at the highest level, right through even from municipal stuff locally? You know, personally, I don't care what party or whatever, because like everybody says, every 4 years, everybody else, we're sick and tired of hearing is, vote me in again, and, you know, I'll do this for you, and nothing ever happens, and we're all going, well, what are you doing? And on we go, right?
Sure. Key performance indicators. So you think that those are missing right now in whatever level of government you're looking at right now?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we don't know how to measure things, right? So we should have simple measurements in place, in my opinion, for us as people to be able to say, are you doing it or not? You know, like, it takes everything out of the equation. It's black and white, win or lose.
Right.
Did you do it? Yes or no?
Okay. All right. KPI, right? KPI.
Yeah, KPI.
I wrote that down. Okay, Rob. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Yeah, it's such a great call. Yeah. Okay. Hey, David, you ever hear of that KPI? Maybe you're more familiar with it. No?
I did. No, I have. It's giving me dreadful flashbacks to when I worked in big box retail.
Okay.
That was a really important thing. KPI was all about like units per day, per customer, conversions, all of these things.
Oh, really?
And if
Okay.
you weren't selling enough shoes, you got in trouble. KPI. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Very interesting. Let's go to Armand in Calgary. Armand.
Hey, Armand there. How's it going, Rob?
I'm good. Thank you for calling,
My
sir.
main issue here is common sense.
Common sense.
We have a country here supporting two sides of a proxy war, supplying the bombs and then supplying the ambulances to go help the victims of the bombs that they sold initially. First problem was Ukraine was the main thing that they're supporting. Now Ukraine's out of the picture, forgotten in the shadows, and now they're supporting Israel and doing what they're doing. So main problem is common sense. Make it make sense. Where is it right? You're providing the good and the evil. So
Okay. So
where do you go from there?
Well, let's, just on the whole situation in the Middle East right now, what should the Canadian government's reaction be when something like that happens to a country like Israel, when it's there's a secret attack by a terrorist organization and they slaughter 1,200 people and take hundreds of other people hostage? Should Canada not have some kind of position on that, some kind of stance on that? when something like that
Focus on its own
happens?
citizens and support the common interest of its own citizens. Stop taking money out of the people that are living here, working hard in Canada, putting all these new taxes and tariffs on, making it hard for us to make money. And they're going and taking this money and giving it to other countries for their socialistic ideology that they want support from bigger influences around the world than supporting their own people.
Okay, Armand, thank you for your call. Thank you. Yeah, good to hear from you. You're the second person who has spoke out in that vein, that you think that too much money from Canada is going to other countries, and you're the second person who has also brought up the military campaigns that are underway in both the Middle East and what's happening in Ukraine right now. When we come back, more of your calls. It's a hot one today. We're just kicking around the big issues and asking you, what do you think the biggest issue is, or the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What's the biggest issue, the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. Brendan in Nova Scotia. Brendan, thanks for calling. What would you say, Brendan?
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I just want to kind of delve into the situation that I feel is affecting especially us Nova Scotians right now with the province, is just housing and immigration in general.
Okay.
Just pretty much at this point where I'm 28 years old myself, and it's pretty much become impossible to even consider trying to buy a home. And with the uprise in cost of rent and just groceries and just the cost of living in general, I just find that it's like our premier here, Tim Houston, just wanting to triple the population of this province by 2030. It's just not going to work. Like, it's just financially not a good idea for it in the long run.
Right. And would you say that these have become issues more recently, or is this something that's been developing over time? Just give me a sense of that.
See, now here's the thing. Like, when I was back in when I went to university around 2014 to about 2018, is when the Trudeau government really took over with us, and I was all for immigration, and I still think to this day that immigration is a great thing for this country for multiculturalism and that whole sense. But it's gotten to the point now where it almost has become too much. Just where this country's constraint is being able to take care of Canadians first by finding them homes or giving them a fair chance to live.
Well, I think it's not even just about taking care of Canadians first, about being able to take care of everyone, whether they arrived here yesterday or 100 years ago.
Right.
Right. What is the social they call it the social capacity? What's the social capacity of the housing supply or the education system or the healthcare system?
And that's just it. And back when Trudeau, like I said, was really enforcing the immigration policies, everyone was for it. Everyone thought it was, well, I shouldn't say everyone, because they're always going to have someone that's against the immigration. But when we're bringing these people here that are more than qualified, for example, doctors and engineers, but then our Canadian government turns around and tells them that they're not qualified for this country, but on a country that's so short of doctors and so short of healthcare, we need to give these people a fighting chance to, practice what they have learned in their life in their country over here. But at the same time, if we overload this country with population, not only is it going to be impossible for these immigrants coming here to be able to sustainably live, it's also becoming impossible for us Canadians to do it in the first place.
Yeah, and it fuels resentment and nativism. So, it's very interesting. If you think about it, I mean, the last figure we have for a full year is that there were 1.8 million newcomers to Canada.
Yeah.
When you take in all the streams of immigration and 1.8 million is the entire population of the maritime provinces.
And that's just it. And eventually,
added to the country in 1 year, sir.
Yeah,
right?
Just to a smaller province like this here in Nova Scotia. I grew up in a small town, where there was not a lot of population, but, now it's booming. It's almost probably quadruple what it used to be. And like I said earlier, like the housing crisis, being 28 with a young family, it's fine. It's becoming damn near impossible. Me working as a middle class, it's just becoming impossible. And I feel that for a lot of people my age, even from the age of like 22 to about probably like late 30s, like everyone is struggling to find something to live in.
All right.
And that's
Thank you, Brendan.
Like affording rent.
Yeah. Got you, Brendan. Thank you. Housing and immigration. Yeah, and the links between the two. Very good. Tobias in Calgary. Hi, Tobias.
Hey, Rob. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Tobias. Thank you.
Good.
What's the
I just
biggest
wanna talk
issue
about,
in the country right now?
Well, I just want to talk about private donations to political parties and how that doesn't really reflect how Canadians see it. When you think about, all these politicians, they receive pretty damn good wage for what they do. I don't know if you've watched the question period lately or not, but I'm pretty frustrated by that, just to see the lack of inaction or anything happening whatsoever. But it's really frustrating for me to see the voice of true Canadians really not being heard.
Okay.
I think that there should be a revamp in the political system in that way, where maybe you're not allowed to, inject money from corporations or from private individuals or people that have these special interests lobbying towards a common goal of theirs, but not of the true Canadians. It feels like people are kind of given, they're not being given the voice that they deserve.
Okay. You think there's too much money in politics?
Yes, I do. I think it's ridiculous. I think every politician makes way more money than they should. If you pay them all a living wage, like they're public servants. If they're public servants, then why should they be being paid 3 times the amount of a normal Canadian?
Okay. So say being a member of parliament's they would say it's a 7-day-a-week job. There are no days off. You don't get to see your family. There's a lot of travel back and forth between, say, Ottawa and Calgary, for example. Would you do that for $180,000 a year?
Well, I've worked on the oil rigs for half my life, and I did that for $100,000 a year.
Right. Okay. So, all right. Money in politics. Okay, Tobias. Thank you. I will just say there are very strict contribution limits, at least at the federal level, when it comes to making contributions to a favored candidate. An individual can't donate more than $1,700. That's all. That's it. That's all. Okay, we'll come back and take a couple of more calls, and we'll wrap up the first hour of Talk Back as we talk about the big issues facing the country right now. You're on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Winding down hour 1 of Talk Back, another hour coming up right after the news with more of your calls on the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing the country right now at 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Mike in Calgary. Hi, Mike.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Mike. Good to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest issue in the country or the biggest challenge right now?
The biggest challenge in this country right now, like them gentlemen were correct, our money's going everywhere else instead of helping the people out here. Like you go along Deerfoot, any highway around Calgary or outside Calgary, you see tents, homeless people living around under a tree. Our money should stay in this country, okay? Help out the people in your country first before you intend to help somebody that's been at war for thousands of years. If they cannot straighten out their issues, what makes you think by us giving our hard-earned dollar to other countries is going to help them?
Okay, so things like a foreign aid or military assistance to other countries, you don't agree with that. You think that money would be better spent at home. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because
very interesting.
Don't get me wrong.
To bring that up. Yeah,
I was not born in this country. I'm an immigrant like everybody else. I came from a country that we had issues, but we came here for a better life.
Okay.
also, he's giving away money to the newcomers, okay? And we're all suffering here. A lot of people out here lost their jobs when Fort McMurray caught on fire and everything. He wasn't out there to help anybody else. Our government was not there to help anybody else, and I don't find that's correct.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you think whatever government spending is happening, you think the ratio is off? Too much is leaving the country, not enough is staying in the country.
Exactly.
Fair enough?
Exactly.
All right. Fair enough.
And I
fair
believe
enough, sir.
when Harper was around, our dollar had value, and it was just above the U.S. dollar
Yeah,
back
for
then.
some time it was, yeah, and until the oil price went down, and then the dollar went down with it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very hot first hour. We're going to stick with this topic and take more of your calls coming up in hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback, where we have been asking what is the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing Canada and Canadians right now. 1-833-668-2577. Is it the cost of living because of higher inflation, higher interest rates? Trying to pay for the basics like groceries, utility bills, credit card bills, trying to put gas in the tank. Is it affordable housing, trying to find an apartment you can afford, trying to find a house you can afford within your current budget? Job security, finding a job, trying to hang on to the job that you have, precarious employment, gig economy jobs. The latest unemployment report is coming out later this week on Friday. Healthcare. Nobody's mentioned healthcare. That is so interesting to me. For years, I mean, if not decades, whenever pollsters would ask Canadians, what is the top issue in the country? Healthcare would always be near the top of the list. You know, we have a terrible shortage of family doctors. Emergency rooms across the country are in crisis. Long waits for medical treatment. Healthcare. Immigration. We've done a lot of shows about immigration. We've interviewed a lot of people about immigration. 1.8 million people came to Canada in the last year. Even the Trudeau government is admitting now that it has had to rein in immigration. It's got out of hand. A lot of people have said, you know, there used to be a consensus in Canada. Immigration is good for the country. We need immigrants to help our economy grow. But now it seems a lot of people think the levels of immigration over the last few years has just been too much. Someone said that in the first hour. It seems like it's too much. It has overwhelmed the country's social capacity, housing, education, healthcare, so many things. Let's get to the phone calls again. 1-833-668-2577. Bonnie in Alberta. Thanks for calling, Bonnie.
Hi.
Hi, Bonnie. What would you say, Bonnie?
I'm kind of, well, what really bothers me sometimes is when you're listening to the news and, you know, it just seems like the Liberals are getting away with so much and you don't hear anything about it. And even the NDP, the two joining together and outvoting different things. Well, I don't think that's fair. I mean, you vote for NDP or you vote for a Liberal. So why are they joining these things? And the media is maybe not doing great at saying all these things. They seem very one-sided. And I listened to Danielle Smith the other day because I was really wondering what she was like. And she just really gave me such a good impression of somebody that's going to run the country.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
I just wish the media would be a little more sympathetic to the UCP. They're trying, and they seem to have a lot of common sense and a lot of good issues. So why is the media doing that?
So you think there's bias in the media?
Taxpayers. Pardon?
There's a bias in the media, you would say?
Well, I sure feel like there is.
You feel like there is, yeah? Like a pro-liberal bias and an anti-conservative bias?
Right. The Canadian taxpayers are out there, and they're looking at all this money that's being spent by the Liberal government, and a lot of it, the people don't even have offices or anything, and they're getting all this money. Now, how are they getting away with that and not being in jail? I think Trudeau should have been put in jail a long time ago.
Well, I don't know about being put in jail, but okay. I mean,
if
you can disagree. You can disagree with the government without wanting to throw the prime minister in jail, I would like to think.
Well, if you or I did any of those things, we wouldn't be sitting here. Look at the Trump
Well, I don't know. I mean, what has he done that he should go to jail for?
Well, how much money is he worth now? Obviously, he's not getting paid that much to be worth that much money.
Well, I mean, I don't know what is the salary for the prime minister these days. I think it's about $400,000 or something to be the prime minister of Canada.
Yeah, but then you pay $5,000 an expensive count for a hotel room, and that's what we're paying for. Should he be able to get away with stuff like that?
Right. Okay. So yeah, the extravagance of some of the trips bothers you, right?
A lot of the trips.
A lot. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah. Very interesting. Bias in the media. That's okay. That's a good one. Wrote that down. Sean in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Sean. You're on the air.
Hi, Rob. I love the show. I love how you're talking about all these different issues, and that's what my pick for the biggest problem in Canada is all these issues boils down to leadership. And
leadership, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, it's leadership. We need a quicker turnaround on a bad report card for whatever party or leader needs to be in. The people of Canada need to have a bigger way to administer consequences, or have our leaders truly hear us and maybe fear's the wrong word, but be aware that consequences can come quicker than they are now. To wait for the next
so I brought
election.
up this thing with a previous caller who bemoaned the lack of leadership in the country, lack of accountability, no consequences for poor decisions or poor outcomes from decisions, these sorts of things. And I proposed various direct democracy initiatives, direct democracy like recall legislation. They tried to do it with Mayor Gondek in Calgary, have recall legislation, but the threshold is so high, right? So it failed. But direct democracy would also be something like a binding referendum like they have in the United States. You know, a ballot. You hear about this in the United States. They have ballot initiatives, right?
Yeah.
Do you support whatever legalization of marijuana, for example, just to, to take one, right? Are you in favor of things like that, like more referendums and stuff like that?
So so not just polling and taking people's opinion and having a cross section of what this percentage of Canadians think, but when it does hit a threshold that makes a difference. I live in Calgary. I'm aware of what you referred to with the mayor. The bar was too high, but a quicker turnaround, more real, a measuring stick that we can quickly put the fear into our politicians to make real changes. And great, you know what the outcome of the poll is, but let's also talk about what happens after the poll. A bad report card needs course correction, and that's what I think is the most important thing.
All right, Sean, thank you for your call. To Airdrie, Angela in... we have to stop. Angela, you hang on the line. I have to pay attention to the clock here. It's 11 minutes after the hour, and we have to stop. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback, hour number 2, and this is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been asking what's the biggest issue or the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now. Let's go to Angela in Airdrie. Sorry about that, Angela. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in the conversation I forget what time of day it is, Angela, and the boss doesn't like that. So how are you today?
Rob, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. We're all wrapped up in tons of things in this country at all times.
Yeah.
I get it. Well, I've been trying to get through for a long time because you have great topics. And
thank you.
I think there's so many different things that people struggle with in this country, whether they're new, whether they've been here forever, whether they're like making the top, dollar or making the lowest dollar. And people just can't seem to get together and do things for each other, except for sending money to other countries to promote war. And no matter if it's helping people or whatnot over there, it's still promoting war. And that money is just getting wasted. We are having problems in this country with our health care, with our cost of living, with our food, with everything. And the money that's going isn't properly allocated to where it should be going. That's one thing. We have so many doctors coming from other countries here, and they have to redo everything over again to be a doctor, even though a body's a body.
Yeah.
Like, prescriptions are prescriptions. It's all the same medications coming from all the same pharma labs and everything else. You have certain countries that can come here and be a doctor right away. Certain countries that come here, they cannot be a doctor right away. It's kind of all over the place in who you are and who you talk to. You have nurses that are overworked because they want to give them overtime, but they don't want to take it because they're getting taxed too much on that. And it's not worth going in and doing like an overtime shift for $200 after taxes when they're leaving their families. There's really, it's
okay.
That's a hard one too with the healthcare. And people seem to be fighting over all of the politics and all of the religious stuff, and they're not really looking at the big picture. They need to elect someone who is there for everyone, not for themselves and not just for their party, but for everyone, and looking at the things that mean the most to everyone, which is our economy, which is our food, which is our water. Big thing, water, Canada. Having a shortage in your city, you can't water your lawn. You can't, you have to have so many baths a day. We have huge problems with children in schools being bullied, and there's not enough resources for these people and for families to get out of work so that they can go see their child who's been bullied all day, or they can get fired because they just need to be there. And to get a counselor, to get extra help is just uncalled for because we have so many people coming in that there's just not enough resources for.
Right.
This country is bountiful, full of so many things that our resources are unlimited. But we sell our resources to other countries when we can be using them here. Our gas is going to go up, and our oil because of
gas is going up now. Yeah, gas and oil. Gas where David and I are near Ottawa is. I think it went up about 15 cents a liter there in just the last day or two, something like that, Dave.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're not making them. We're not. We have this abundance of resources, whether it's natural resources or talent, and we're just not making the most of it. Right.
No, we're giving it. We're selling it. We're selling it away.
Right. Okay.
And it's instead of
when it comes to recognition of foreign credentials in the medical field, for example, foreign trained doctors, foreign trained nurses. We have how many of these people are here and they're underemployed? They're working in a hotel or they're
so many people from
driving
India
an Uber
that
or something.
come here and they can't be a doctor when they're a doctor there, and they have the best doctors in the planet.
Okay. All right. Very interesting,
go through the entire
Angela. Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate your call. Thank you for hanging on there. Yeah, lots of issues there. Mel in Alberta. Thank you for calling, Mel. Go ahead, Mel.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, Mel.
I'll be very short.
Okay.
Because a lot of the people have covered some of my thoughts.
Okay.
The major problem, I think, is government overspending and not targeting their money in, the proper areas. I always say we have to, even in your family, you take care of your own problems before telling somebody else how to do theirs.
Sure.
And anyway, going along with the overspending, this here Liberal NDP kind of agreement, they wanted to go with universal dental, universal medications, everything.
Yes.
And that particular universal health care, it should stay. But universal dental, universal medication should not be there. It
Why
should
not?
be based on your family income.
Okay.
Like my wife and I, we get a guaranteed income supplement because we're, I guess, according to the government, we're
low income.
1/8 of the average. That's what we live, but our house is paid for, so we're fine that way. You know, the maintenance is getting a little behind because of the costs, but the costs all over the world went up. It's not strictly a Canadian problem. And that's one thing I was listening on the American news, and nobody has brought it up. Everybody says they're blaming the U.S. government. Well, the problem is worldwide. Everything's gone up worldwide. You know, there's not a lot, you know, an original like our government could do as far as costs and stuff, other than decreasing some of the, what I call unnecessary taxes. And I think a lot of people in Alberta know what I'm talking about there. But anyway, mainly the universal programs they're promoting should not be universal.
They should be means tested. They should be targeted, right?
Exactly.
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. Mel, we have to go. I thank you so much for your call. We have to stop here. Hour number 2 of the Talkback, the biggest issue, the biggest challenge facing the country right now. What are your thoughts? 1-833-668-2577. Join the discussion here on Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The big issues, the biggest issue, the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now. Tony in Alberta. Hi, Tony.
Hello.
Yeah, great to hear from you, Tony. What would you say?
Yeah. I would say it's you guys, the media, that's the biggest problem in our country.
Why are you blaming? Why are you picking on us? What did we do that's so bad?
You never tell the truth, and you all have the same
Never tell
story.
the truth.
No, you're always pumping some bullshit all the time.
Okay, Tony. Thank you for calling. That'll be the end of our conversation because you can't say those words on the public airwaves. And you have yourself a nice day. Hope it was worth the wait. Satinder in Calgary. Satinder, thank you for calling, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Thanks.
You're
I would say overtaxation, overspending, and then a disconnect between what Canadians need or want and what politicians are delivering. Also a way to recall government just because of the ethics violations with Trudeau and no consequences whatsoever for his actions.
Okay.
And some sort of accountability with penalties to politicians for the bad decisions they make that impact Canadians in a negative way. Because they get no recourse for whatever they do.
Right. So a lack of accountability.
Yes.
Right. And what are some ideas you might have to solve that issue?
I don't think they should be. They should get pensions unless they've done 8 years. If they've done 4 years and they go away, they should not get a pension.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be one thing. But like if, for example, Trudeau had the ethics violations. Maybe he should have been temporarily suspended, and the Deputy Prime Minister should have taken over while that was fully resolved, or maybe even forced to resign. Like there should be no ethical violations against the Prime Minister. He should be doing everything ethically.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, the consequence for those multiple ethics violations by Prime Minister Trudeau, I think he's up to 4 of them now. I mean, the maximum penalty is a $500 fine.
Yeah, that's nothing. If one of us does it, as a regular Canadian, we'll get fined or jail time or whatever, right? But the Prime Minister and all these politicians can get away with whatever they want.
Right. Now, at the federal level, I mean, you brought up pensions, and you're not the first person to bring up pensions that maybe sanction the pensions. That's very interesting. At the federal level, of course, 6 years. If you're an MP for 6 years, you qualify for the pension. Some people have suggested why do they get a pension at all? For example, if you're a member of the Ontario legislature, there's no pension plan. There used to be a pension plan. They did away with it back when there was a conservative government, Mike Harris government, when he was the premier. Used to be a pension plan, pretty sweet pension plan. no pension plan anymore. But at the federal level, 6 years, and you qualify for a modest pension. We will be back with more of your calls on Talkback. What's the biggest issue, the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been asking, what do you think is the biggest issue in the country right now, or the biggest challenge that Canadians face these days? 1-833-668-2577 to Keith in Alberta. Thanks for calling, Keith. Hi there.
Hi, Rob, and good afternoon. The item that I've chosen as a big challenge is justice. Justice for the people. It is a very big business when you look at all aspects of it, and it doesn't seem to be making any inroads into bettering the quality of life for people and for citizens in Canada. You go into a small community of 5,000 or 6,000 people, and you've got sheriffs, law enforcement, security, and the RCMP, and all of these organizations have a great cost to their operation, and the public, the general public, is supporting those costs. And my own personal feeling is that that is not justified, and I don't think there's any realism to it or accountability from those that support the costs for these various agencies.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yes.
So you think the cost of law enforcement and running, say, the justice system is too high, and that it's not delivering for the general public? Is that what you would say?
That is correct.
Okay.
There's so many different phases to justice, right from the person that walks the street right through to probation, the people that look after those that after they're released from the prisons, and in between a number of very expensive offices also that are all part of the justice system.
Sure.
I also think, Rob, that we talk about our governments, we talk about our Prime Minister, and that he's not doing such a good job. We don't support him on that. But really, when you get right down to it, it's you and I and the citizens of this country that allowed those people that are in political offices that we now condemn. We put those people in that office. And I think that we have to be much more thorough and much more complete in our selection of public of politicians that will be standing for public office.
Okay, so a better vetting process then, or by the general public.
Yes, more.
Okay, I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah, responsibility by the citizens, because like we have the elections, it's a democracy, and it's for the people, by the people. But I think the people have stepped back in their responsibilities and need to come forth again and take back their power.
Okay, very interesting. I particularly find your comments on the cost of law enforcement quite interesting, sir, and maybe an important issue in Alberta as well. Exploration of some kind of provincial police force, of course, in the province of Alberta. So thank you for your call, Keith. Cost of the justice system from beginning to end. Phyllis in Calgary. Thanks for calling. Phyllis, hi there, Phyllis.
Hi, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm good today, Phyllis. Thank you.
I wanted to talk about accountability. I agree with a few of your callers that have already broach that subject. I think our government needs to be run like a private company. I know we're a long way from that, but it starts with results. And being from Alberta, I know about KPIs. My husband works for the government, and there it's just results. We need to have a report card for our elected officials. We pay for everything.
Sure.
And, it just galls me. April 1st of every year, they automatically give themselves a raise. Everybody gets a raise. There's no ifs, ands, or about it. It's automatic.
Right.
And now the carbon tax also goes up on April 1st every year automatically. So I have issues with that, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think
and I'm not here to defend the Trudeau government, but you know what Mr. Trudeau would say? Well, Phyllis, what are you worried about the carbon tax going up? Because your rebate is going up too. We're going to give you more money. It's painless, the carbon tax. Painless. You get those checks every
we'll see how well that works in a couple of years. Anyways, he won't be here that long. But I like the one thing about the American political system that I agree with, and I think we should adopt it here, is a 2-term maximum. Then if you have someone like Trudeau, we would have been rid of him by now, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and also the fellow that said the ethics breach is you get a $500 fine. Wow, that'll really set these politicians back.
Plus, it's the whole system that is set up to even enforce ethics and accountability. Who appoints the ethics commissioner?
Right. Yeah.
The Prime Minister appoints the ethics commissioner. Right? Who appoints the commissioner? Who appoints the commissioner of the RCMP, for that matter? Right? Who appoints the commissioner? Who appoints the commissioner of the RCMP?
The Prime Minister. Yeah, he's got way too much power. He appointed that whole board of the SDTC, and I sure hope the RCMP get those documents sooner than later, because we are going to.
The issue there is the issue. Not to get too technical. The issue about the documents around Sustainability Technology Development Canada, the so-called Green Slush Fund, the RCMP may have the documents. It just does Parliament have the documents? It's the parliamentarians who want to see the documents, so produce the documents. That's the big issue. That's what that fight is all about. Okay, Phyllis, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Have a good day.
Second person to bring that up, and term limits. First person to bring up term limits. Thought that would have come up earlier. Okay, we'll stop here. Some more calls. 1-833-668-2577. Just ahead. It's Talk Back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been asking, what do you think the biggest issue facing the country is right now, or the biggest challenge facing Canadians right now? 1-833-668-2577. 2 or 3 lines available there for you, and plenty of time yet to take your call. To Airdrie, Teresa, thanks for calling. Teresa, hi there.
Good. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Teresa. Thank you for calling.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome. What would you say?
There are a lot of things that are troubling, but what I wanted to mention today was all of the hate in this country. Who let all this hate in? It's changing the fabric of our society, and it really doesn't feel like anything is being done about it.
Okay. In what regard, ma'am?
I'm talking about all of the
pro-Palestinian protests?
I'm talking about protests in favor of terrorists and terrorism, celebrating a year of after the terrorist attacks.
Yes.
You know, I'm not in favor of innocent people being killed and bombed, but a war has been started and people continue to celebrate it, and it's horrible. And this country never used to be that way. It's disturbing, And I don't think that our police or our politicians, firstly, are letting the police manage it. It's terribly distressing, and it really is a concern for our country and for our children.
Okay. What do you think should be done about that? Are you saying you think that there's political interference in police operations, that politicians are directing the police and saying, hey, take a hands-off approach with these protests? Is that what you think is happening?
I think possibly,
Yes?
but I don't think that they're taking a proper stand on enforcing the law or interpreting the law so that things can be managed. You know, the right to free speech is one thing, but the right to continue to celebrate and incite terror is really not. And that destroys everybody, not just the people who are being targeted. So I really would like to see some action on that, and I think that's not something that we haven't
when do you
heard
think
for a long,
when
long
does it
time.
cross a line? Because this is what people are struggling with right now, I think, is when, and I would include law enforcement here, when does a protest cross a line into hate speech or violence or threats, for example? If somebody wants to organize a rally in support of the Palestinians or against a policy of Israel and what it's doing in Gaza or what it's doing in Lebanon right now, when do you cross that line? When, for example, when you start chanting from the river to the sea, do you cross the line at that point?
I think they do, and I think that they do, and I think that the politicians have been too afraid to call that out.
For fear of losing votes in particular ridings, or ethnic communities, whatnot.
Perhaps,
right?
And I don't know why else. But you look at the news, it's widespread, and it doesn't need to be that way. When people come here, they come here and they're respected and they're welcomed and they're expected to contribute and to be Canadian and loving and respectful and inclusive. And I think that when we have this kind of behavior that's not being checked, look what's happened in our universities. It's absolutely disgusting. I think that you are destroying your country, you're destroying the moral fabric of your country, and people who are otherwise loving and giving, it makes them very afraid, and I think it turns them away from that normal behavior or normal desire to behave. So that's my comment. I thank you for making it. I'm not in favor of anybody having violence, but what's going on here is not okay. And the continued calls for Israel to check their behavior is really not responsible, and it doesn't help us manage a terrible thing that's going on. Thank you for my call. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, I appreciate your call. I'm glad you raised that issue. I was thinking about that this morning, just watching some of the videos. I mean, huge protests in Ottawa. My wife was actually running some errands in Ottawa over the weekend, David, and got kind of caught up in that just from a traffic point of view. Huge rallies in Ottawa this weekend.
That caused those, like the people who there have been a lot of people don't realize this because it's not on the news every week, but there have been demonstrations, marches, call it pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, whatever. There's been a march in Ottawa almost every weekend for the last year.
Yeah.
And the size of them will come and go, but I have not, over the course of the year, I live right down there, I haven't seen anything even close to the crowds that were out yesterday.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, lots of police. It makes me wonder, what is that costing the police? Like a local police service?
Well, it would be in the millions over the course of a year, I'm sure.
To patrol these.
Yeah.
And it's not as though, big protests in the nation's capital, nothing new. Of course, we're, protest city. People love to come to Ottawa, protest all kinds of things. You see the size of the rallies that happen in Toronto, the protests in Toronto, big one in Calgary. Like, what is the cost to the local police budget to be patrolling these protests? And to the caller's point, what is happening when people cross the line? There have been cases where people have been charged with hate crimes, but a very, very interesting topic, and especially on a day like today. Okay, we'll come back. We do have time for a couple more calls if you do want to weigh in. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Talk back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Winding down today's Talk Back here alongside David Smith. I'm just going through. I promised I would take notes and what people were saying and see if any themes emerge. And I just look here. It's very interesting. We took 4 or 5 calls today, David. People who think we spend too much money in other countries.
Yeah, you hear that.
Whether
more
that's through foreign aid or in military assistance to other countries. It was a big issue for some of the callers today. The very first caller right out of the gate, Nathaniel in Calgary, said, we're sending too much money to other countries. The need is so great here. Why are we spending so much money in other countries? I found that interesting. It came up time and again. Leadership. I look here. Leadership, accountability and transparency. KPI.
Yeah.
What's that again? Key performance indicators.
Yeah.
Right? Key performance indicators. What else do we? Leadership came up. We're not getting great leadership in the country right now. We're not targeting our spending effectively. We're spending too much and it's not being targeted effectively. And one of the callers suggests, look, why do some programs need to be universal? If we know where the need is, why aren't we targeting the spending on those in need? This could go right to the whole thing about old age security right now that's happening in the House of Commons. Why would we top up old age security payments when we know who the low income seniors are? And there's a benefit for those people called the Guaranteed Income Supplement. If you're going to top up something, top up the GIS.
Yeah.
Not the universal OAS. I thought that was such a great point. Such a great point. But one person brought up the opioid crisis, Joe in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of interesting right now because there's a election campaign happening in British Columbia, and this is a big issue. The drug crisis, the overdose crisis, because BC was the petri dish for all the progressive ideas about what to do because of the drug crisis. British Columbia was the first to open up a supervised injection site. It was the first and still the only province to decriminalize illegal drugs, embraced programs like Safe Supply, and they've had lots of issues. And now you have the NDP government there seeking re-election, backtracked.
Yeah, major
right, on a
backtrack.
lot of these things. Yeah. Nobody, David, brought up climate change.
Not
a
one
single person.
Isn't that interesting? Not one call.
Not one person. I think that's it's interesting because Abacus Data just had a poll in recent day that it showed concerns about climate change have fallen quite substantially in the last year, down about 14 points in the last year. And you think about everything you hear about climate change in the news from politicians, and you do a show, what's the biggest issue? You do it for 2 hours, you talk to everyday Canadians, and not a single person brings it up. We'll be back tomorrow with another Talk Back. More of your calls, more issues for us to chew on. The latest breaking news is next. News Radio.